Hello and welcome to the 2016 Top 10 European Logistics Locations Revealed webinar. My name is Chris Sainer. I'm the founder of EFT, and together with Prologis, we produced a study for the second time trying to realize where the top European locations are for logistics. We first held a study back in 2013 and we repeated the study this year. With some interesting results which we want to share with you now. Joining me on this webinar are Dirk Sosef from Prologis, Henk Volmer from Prologis, and also MJ Botman from DSV. We want to come across a number of areas, and we're going to debate some of the interesting findings of the study. I will let Dirk, Henk and MJ introduce themselves for their different pieces. We're going to have a presentation from Dirk looking at the research findings itself, and now hopefully you can see who's going to be joining you. They're lovely faces. Mine's not on there unfortunately, but they're far more handsome and better looking than me. And then we'll also have some discussion between Henk and MJ about some of the findings and what their views are about what these findings mean for the industry in Europe. To give you some background on the study, we surveyed, there we go, some background on the study. We surveyed 216 actual users of warehouses or distribution centers in Europe. These are both 3PLs and from all the main industries, retail, consumer goods, pharma, automotive, etc., etc. Our goals were, as you can see listed on the slide, our goals were to understand the most important factors which drive the selection of the location, identify sort of the current hotspots in Europe, and also explore what the drivers, what really makes companies change where they locate their logistics locations in the future. So I'd now like to hand over to Dirk, and hopefully he'll introduce himself quickly, explain what he does at Prologis, to take us through some of the more details of the survey. So over to you, Dirk.
Thanks for this introduction, Chris. I'm Dirk Sosef, overseeing the European Research and Strategy Department here at Prologis. And indeed, together with EFT, we analyzed all the results we got from all the respondents and prepared this report. In the following 10 minutes, I would like to share with you the key highlights of our top location study. To identify the top locations of Europe, we first asked to rank the 11 criteria which are shown on this slide. These criteria are on the top of customers' mind when selecting a new location. Occupiers look at a broad set of criteria, and they look beyond real estate factors, such as cost. Requirements, such as infrastructure and labor, are important as well. On the next slide, you see the ranking of the location factors. In summary, users favor closeness to economic network, low cost, both transport and real estate, and an availability of skilled labor. Different sectors rank these 11 criteria differently. Transport cost is the most important location driver for the auto, high-tech, and manufacturing industries, while retail, including online retailers, sees labor availability and proximity to customers and suppliers as the most important location criteria. The next slide shows the most favorable location in Europe based on this ranking. On this heat map, you see an overview of 100 logistics markets in Europe. The hottest logistics hotspots are red. So, what are the most desired locations in Europe? Among the 100 locations in Europe, the most desired markets are within the Benelux and Western Germany. A common theme is their capable infrastructure. In addition, these markets scored also well in their proximity to customers and suppliers. Among these highest ranked markets, Venlo is Europe's most desirable location, a repeat of our 2013 study. In comparison to the study we did 2 years ago, we see markets in Central Eastern Europe moving up in the ranking. Central Poland and Istanbul entered the top 10, and Prague is close. Back in 2013, there were 4 markets in the top 20. This time, it doubled to 8. Markets in Central Eastern Europe score particularly high on cost factors, such as real estate and labor cost. But on the other hand, they lack in comparison to the key Western European markets in criteria tied with infrastructure and proximity to customers and suppliers. So, Benelux is hot. Markets in CE are rising. But which markets are losing ground? In general, these markets are located in Western Europe. Markets that showed the strongest decline in the ranking include Liège and Central Germany. Air cargo hubs like Frankfurt and Amsterdam Schiphol lost ground as well. According to the survey results, this is due to lower scores for the location drivers, labor availability and cost of labor. Economic and structural drivers are constantly changing. Companies therefore need to constantly evaluate and optimize distribution strategies to ensure the highest service levels for the lowest cost. We identified 11 key drivers of change which will affect European distribution network strategies over the next 5 years. This chart shows the importance of each driver of change. In general, structural drivers of change, such as staff, trade and infrastructure, are considered as a stronger driver of change than cyclical drivers, such as economic development and consumption. Availability of staff is the most important driver, which is likely both structural, just a simple presence of people, and cyclical, the simple unemployment rate. What has really changed in comparison to a 2013 study is the rise of the drivers sustainability and e-commerce. Sustainability has become particularly important for brand-sensitive customers, such as retailers and consumer packaged goods distributors. As for e-commerce, we expect this only will become an even bigger driver of change in the future. For each driver of change, we ask whether these change drivers would lead to more or less consolidation in the distribution network strategy over the next 5 years. As you can see on this chart, all drivers are expected to lead to more consolidation. The strongest driver of further consolidation of distribution network strategies are mergers and acquisitions among logistic providers, availability of qualified staff, and improving global trade volumes. Drivers of change with the highest allocation to decentralization are e-commerce growth and volatility in fuel prices. This ongoing consolidation trend is expected to lead to a more pan-European network, something we will discuss on the next slide. Logistics facility users continue to consolidate their operations in larger, more efficient Class A distribution centers and plan to operate in larger networks. As you can see on this chart, 2/3 of all respondents expect to operate in a pan-European distribution network by 2020. This is an increase of approximately 20%, and this is at the expense of national and local distribution networks. Expectations are that locations positioned at important transport corridors and close to population centers will benefit most from this ongoing consolidation trend. This page shows the evolution of location strategies in Europe. Before the European Union was established in 1993, many companies had a national setup, with a distribution center in all major countries in which they played. This supply chain is shown on the left side of the slide. When the EU started to open its internal borders, global sourcing became more important, and factories were more globally focused. The responsibility for logistics became more European as well, and companies developed strategies for European supply chain management. European distribution centers, EDCs, began serving all the major countries of Europe. Companies today are increasingly using a hybrid model of centralized and decentralized distribution facilities. Transportation costs and service levels are important in the minds of occupiers. And this hybrid supply chain is shown on the right side of this slide. So, let me wrap up this section of the webinar. In this section, we talked about location criteria. Users favor closeness to economic networks, low cost, both transport and real estate, and an availability of skilled labor. Markets in the Benelux and Germany are Europe's desirable locations, but we see markets in Central Eastern Europe rising in the overall ranking. Structural drivers of change, such as staff, trade, and infrastructure, are considered as the most important for the future. Logistic corridors and infill locations in Europe's largest metropolitan areas with high trade volumes and consumer demand are expected to benefit most from these changes. Thank you for your attention, and I would like to hand it back to Chris to hear what this all means in practice.
Thank you, Dirk, for that in-depth look at the recent study we did. So now we're going to hand over to both MJ Botman from DSV and Henk Fulmer from Prologis. Before I do, just a reminder, please feel free to type any questions you have for any of the participants into the question tab on the webinar software. We're getting quite a few questions in already, but it's always good to get more. And we will go through those questions at the end of this short discussion. So I'm going to hand over to Dirk and Henk. They're going to have hopefully an interactive, interesting discussion sorry, Henk and MJ, as Dirk said, about what this means in practice for warehouse users in Europe. So Dirk and Henk, MJ and Henk, if you could introduce yourselves and what you do, and then over to you.
All right, Chris, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Quick introduction of myself. My name is Henk Fulmer. I work in the Global Customer Solutions group at Prologis. Global Customer Solutions is a team of people who work with our cross-border and multi-market customers, so customers who lease space from us in various locations. And in addition, we work with these customers to look for new opportunities, as well as, of course, new business with customers that do not yet work with our company. Meina-Chan, can you introduce yourself as well?
Yes, please. Thank you, Henk. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining this. My name is Meina-Chan Botman. People call me MJ, as Chris already mentioned. I'm working for DSV Solutions, which is the contract logistics side of the DSV company, the DSV Group. I'm a member of the Solutions Board, and my responsibility is global business development. I'm in the business now already for 17 years. Have been involved in projects first, moved to operations, and then into the role that I'm currently having, being the global business responsible and all the new projects involved. And that also leads to what we are discussing today, locations, how to serve your customers also via the infrastructure that you can provide.
Great. Thanks, MJ. Thanks for joining, and thanks for providing the opportunity to have someone comment from the market, from people who day to day work in logistics warehouses and locations, and are actively involved in the selection of these locations. We've done, as Chris indicated, this study now twice. We're considering, of course, every time we do this, to change it a little bit. And one of the thoughts is that next time around we'll be looking more at indeed the various logistics verticals and what these verticals do in terms of site selection and how they differ. If you look at the DSV business manager, what would you say are the most active logistics vertical for your company in the last 6 to 9 months?
All right. Well, in today's world, with all the economical turmoil, in fact, everybody is moving. But what we have seen the most is definitely retail and fashion. Many things moving in there, also as a result of e-commerce for sure. That's where we had the most change requests, the most projects coming in. Healthcare in terms of medical devices, pharma, that's definitely with us on number 2. It's related to different distribution models. It's probably related to changes in the way supply chain is approached in the healthcare industry. And on number 3, I would say the industrial environment, industrial vertical. We get many requests from companies that are redesigning their supply chain, and then the question is, okay, these are our customers, these are our distribution details, this is where our factories are. So what is it now for us the best to do in terms of supply chain setup? And that of course includes warehouses, hubs, whatever have we, and of course the distribution connected to it. But retail fashion on our end is definitely moving the most as we speak.
Okay. Jan, this study, of course, looks at location, and we've been, I think, very fortunate to have so many customers respond, how that works in their business, both today as well as looking forward. What would you say is the role of your clients that you serve in these facilities when it comes to site selection, or when it comes to warehouse location? Is that something that is very much driven by the DSV team, or indeed, does the customer have a very clear role and influence on those decisions?
At the end, of course, the customer decides, but in the determination of what is the most ideal location, I would say both are just as much involved. On the customer side, you have a lot of requirements, a lot of ideas about how to serve their customers best. There are service requirements, SLAs connected to that, and in order to fulfill all those in the most, in the best way, you need to come up with a proposal that fits. When you look into locations, I'm speaking now from out of Venlo, you're number one. Honesty says that this is something that also happened in the past from the former Frans Maas company that was based in Venlo, but definitely in Venlo many developments have happened, the area developed, and we also moved all premises into a new campus site here. There are some internal drivers for that, but there is also still quite some requests for the location, and there you see already that both things come together, the client and the 3PL company. Of course, when you have a proposal to respond to, when you have to deliver certain service requirements, the 3PL company, and we will not be the only ones doing that, they will look into what are the options today as we speak, what is it that we have available, and what is connected to the service levels required. And definitely it needs to be a business case on either ends. It's not like that's the only thing that we will deliver or offer. It depends on the size of the project, on the availability of space and the proper location that fits to tender. It can be that next to campus sites you will move into dedicated projects or kickoffs of new developments as a result of a nice starting project in a new location. So at the end there is a customer asking for certain requirements and the delivery of products to their end customers. So the distribution patterns determine what would be the ideal location, and then it's about where are the warehouses of a certain provider based. Are they still having the proper space available? Are they able to deliver the vertical requirements? Because certain sites can deliver different type of verticals, as you understand. And in case there is no direct match, then we will look into, okay, what is it that we can build up? What is it that we can develop that still fits the customer purpose, of course, but that definitely also creates for us the possibility to further grow in the future. So it's a combination and cooperation between the two.
Okay. Jan, we have been seeing both last year as well as into this year many companies requiring not only very large warehouses, but when they come to us, they will also make they make very clear that they will only commit to such a large site if they know and if they can be sure that they can grow in that same location. So that I think is something that we've seen several years ago, but it looks like it's becoming more prominent. So not just very large warehouses, but also the availability to expand and to have the certainty that the developer can provide for that. Is that something that you recognize in terms of the searches that you have seen at DSV?
Definitely. This is also in today's world a question that pops up more and more, because you need to provide flexibility because everything can change. If you look to our customer base, when we look to the top line, to the biggest customers that we serve, and you go back, then you see that with most of them, not all, but most of them, we started on a smaller footprint and then we grew together with them. I think it's fair to state that growing your business from out of existing relationships is more easy as well than greenfield sales with companies that you haven't met before. So taking that in mind, we need to grow with our customers. We need to provide that flexibility.
Connected to mobile device.
Can you still hear me? There is a message. Okay, something else happened. So we need to grow with our customers, and then when you pick up new projects, or maybe even customers that launch a new operation in a certain region, then you can expect them to grow as well when they are successful. There is of course a little bit of a chicken and the egg story, because if they have a certain growth path that would say take 5 years, of course there would be premises today that is needed for their means. At the second side, you need to take into account that that full building that they need in 10 years time is maybe not there yet, because there is also some costs that need to be looked into account. Yeah. Flexible property, flexible arrangements with landlords, possibilities to expand premises is definitely a topic, and that's also what we do when we develop together with companies like yours new assets. We need to take care that we can serve day one, and we need to, together with the customer, develop a plan which over time is delivering them the possibility to further grow, so that we can cater for that growth as well in terms of storage as in distribution. And at the same time, we need to take care that the cost aspects on either side are in line with that.
Yeah, okay. Menejan, the DSV network obviously is quite vast across Europe. You've mentioned the word hub. Is DSV a believer of, very large, call them campus sites, or is your company more going into, a widespread number of distribution facilities, probably as close to the end customer as possible, or a mix of both?
It's I would say a mix of both. When you think about campus sites, in the team of today, the logistic hotspots in Europe, but you see similar things happening in Asia and America, of course. We want to be present on those locations where infrastructure and just the proper execution of whatever is called logistics comes together. So when we take Venlo as an example again, we had a warehouse in the past, but in the meantime it has been growing into a huge campus where we serve several customers. A campus, what is furthermore a campus? I think when everybody is talking about shared user logistics, saving of cost, scale, that can bring certain costs down. That's fair. That's something that we need to pick up, that we need to execute. But in terms of an individual building, I think there is a maximum in terms of what is the efficiency of a building. So a campus site can be, let's say, 200,000 square meters, but most likely it will be divided into a couple of buildings in order to take care that distances and flexibility of operations can still be executed. Yeah. So on those hotspot locations, we definitely will be there. And what you see that what DSV is doing, we are also taking out old operations on, let's call them fault locations, but happening and that arise over time because of a certain request. We are merging several operations into new locations where we have cross-divisional and multimodal solutions. Venlo is one. We have different examples in Sweden, in Germany, etc. But we will also look into individual requests. It's not like every customer can be served by compound. Sometimes something more small, something more close to market, also connected to the vertical requirements in case. They will be looked at. We have today, in the old DSV, we were having 150 locations, warehouse locations I mean. We also have a lot of cross-dock and freight terminals, but let's stick to warehouses for a second. 150 locations worldwide, and since recent, because of the acquisition of UTI, we speak about 300 locations worldwide. So we again will look into, okay, what is it that we can consolidate? What is it that we can improve? On which locations will we be? And for which customers we will take care that separate solutions will be catered for. There is not one solution. The world is too big for that, but that we will focus on market trends like you just explained. We will act on that, but we will keep on focusing on our customer requirements as well, and where needed, that will be outside of campus locations.
Yeah, excellent. Menejan, before we hand it back to Chris for Q&A with the listeners and the audience, there's one more thing I think is interesting to raise, and you mentioned in the verticals that e-commerce is becoming very important. If I look at our business, then currently in Europe, about 10% of our space is truly dedicated space for e-commerce providers, where we know that the full warehouse is used for that purpose. If I look at all the new requirements that come our way, and that's already for the last 2 years, about 20%, so double that amount, is e-commerce related. And I think that's an understatement, because there are clearly customers that take space from us, and we don't always know exactly whether that's a classic operation or a more e-commerce related operation. So that's a massive change. Is that something you see in the DSV business as well, and has that changed the way you look at operations or at location?
Definitely. We will not be a competitor of 100% e-commerce player, by the way. DSV needs to take care that our customers, the various brand owners, that they can be delivered in a multi-channel modus. So we need to be able to cater for their distribution needs, and that runs back into the warehouse. So e-com, a process that we need to facilitate, and then there are still many questions about, okay, are we going to talk about a separate stock for e-commerce products, or are we going to source this all from one stock? And if that has been defined, then you need to look into the processes inside. A customer once said about this, e-commerce is getting much more for less cost. When you think about it in terms of process, that's right, because what you see is that your order lines, your order sizes are much smaller, and you need to deliver them to whatever the individual locations are. So the 3PL companies, and in line with that, the developers need to cater for buildings that can add that flexibility. That means that in pure e-com, you probably will need certain things in terms of automation, because the speed and the flexibility needed is in certain cases not to be provided by manual labor anymore, at least not only. And that means that the inside of certain operations that we run needs to be tailored and re-engineered to cater properly for all the e-commerce requirements that are at hand. In our campus in Venlo, we have 4 big sites. One of them is likely to be a rather automated facility that serves a couple of e-com customers, or I should say multi-channel customers. We need to take care that our processes are tuned up in order to cater for the fast-growing e-commerce world. So definitely this is having an impact on our logistics facilities.
Excellent. Thanks so much, MJ. I'm going to hand it back to Chris to get to the Q&A piece of this. There are quite a few questions that have already come back to us. Chris.
Okay, thank you, Henk, and thank you, MJ, for that enlightening discussion. Yeah, we've had a lot of questions, so we're going to do our best to get through them. Before I open it to Henk, MJ, and Dirk, we've had a few questions just clarifying the respondents to the survey and who were they. So just to clarify once again, the respondents to the survey, which we took the data from, were only users of warehousing in Europe, either logistics companies or retailers, manufacturers, etc. We didn't include any consultants or academics, etc., etc. So it's real pure users of distribution places in Europe. So the first question which I want to put to you, Henk, I think, was about Amazon, actually, and it was, how does this trend in DC/warehouses fit with Amazon's logistics build out in the EU?
Yeah, I'll say a few things on that. I think clearly Jan also mentioned that e-commerce is very important also for the 3PL business, but that is not the ambition to be in Amazon. I think Amazon has been unique in Europe in terms of setting up its very large fulfillment centers across Europe. Germany initially, then very heavily in the UK, in the larger, let's say, e-commerce markets. And I think if you look at what they've done in the last years, it has been much more focused on, proximity to consumers. So what is commonly called the last mile delivery. So a strong focus on sortation centers, a strong focus on parcel hubs. And with that, many of these facilities have gone much closer to the larger metropolitan areas, whilst when they started, that probably wasn't as much on their mind. People want their goods the next day or in some cases even the same day. So that has clearly, I think, triggered a lot of the new developments closer to the main markets. And in that sense, it ties very much in with this study, which has actually said that the logistics corridors and the logistics hotspots, as we've seen them in the last study, that position hasn't changed. In fact, I would say, those logistics location and corridors have even become stronger for both the likes of Amazon, but certainly also for other providers who have e-commerce networks or channels.
Okay, thank you, Henk. MJ, do you have anything to add on that about Amazon?
I, as good as in full, agree to Henk's comments. Amazon is rather unique in the way they have been building up their business. It's 100% provider of e-com solutions. Also, the start of, I think, their full asset base was completely built around those and the processes involved. We will not be an Amazon competitor. We need to act on this multi-channel strategy in order to take care that our customers can be served in the various channels that they need to distribute into. And you see that the requirements that those brand owners have in terms of multi-channel are not, of course they are different. Every brand has its own things, but you see similar processes and similar requirements popping up, especially in retail. Here, two of our next neighbors are building up new facilities here. Some brand owners do it on their own. And then you see huge facilities arising in order to cater for their e-com growth. At the same time, it's always a challenge to get a proper forecast for these kind of programs. I think from all the projects that we are doing that were related to e-com business of our existing customers, yeah, it's not no critics at all, because I understand that certain things are not as visible or clearly to be forecasted as usual. Then again, the word flexibility and possibility to expand buildings is coming to mind. Flexibility is the most important in terms of e-com. Maybe something from a personal note. When I take care for an e-com order myself from out of my home, and you see the delivery promises made, like in 3 days you will have it. As a private customer, I would be fairly happy when the goods arrive at the moment they say. I don't need it tomorrow, I don't need it in 2 weeks, but I'm just happy when I get it according to promise. And I think that's the biggest challenge, because I personally am also annoyed when a promise that was made on the internet by e-com sellers is not made. And that can, of course, have various reasons. It can be the company itself by not having the product, but can also be the service provider in the background with an issue. So it's all about service, it's all about promise, and it's all about flexibility.
Okay. Chris, thank you, MJ. Yeah.
Chris,
Thanks.
if I may add to that, I think this is Dirk, by the way. I think when you think about e-commerce, there are two important points I would like to share with the group. First of all, when you talk about e-commerce, it's not only Amazon and not only the bigger retailers. When you look at the allocation of turnover of web shops here in Europe, the vast majority and the most demand is coming, let's say, from the mid-sized and smaller online retailers. So that's number one. And secondly, as Henk started, and we have some numbers about that, an online retailer is indeed focused on the metropolitan areas, and when we look at the market transactions over the past 3 years, over 60% of the total leases was in metropolitan areas with more than 1 million inhabitants. So that underscores the need from online retailers to be located close to their end customer.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to take the next question that comes in. The question is, does the consolidation of warehouse locations lead to a shortage of supply in prime locations, and if so, do you see the results of that in both availability of land and prime rent? Let me take a stab at that. I think indeed if I go through, let's say, the consolidation requirements that we have seen in the past, let's say 4 or 5 years even, in all those cases, the customer typically shows you, a map, and the desired locations for that consolidation exercise. In most cases, they have done very rigorous analysis of where their customers are, transportation times, transportation costs, and they come up with sort of a gravity model that tells them where they need to locate. And actually, in most cases, those prime locations are again very similar to what the study says. They are oftentimes Benelux or the western part of central Germany to be able to cover both the Benelux and sort of the western part of Germany. Then a location, for example, in Czech Republic or in Slovakia, covering a lot of the Eastern European landscape, and certainly for France and for Spain, something in location like Lyon or even in Madrid. So I think the consolidation requirements that we see in most cases turn out to go to locations that are already very established, and I can only assume, but it's good for Meijner-Jan to comment on that, that the reason why these locations are so popular and are increasingly attractive to users is probably because of the mix of the factors that come out of the study. It's the availability of labor, it's the cost, it's the availability of space, it's the access to main transportation modes, and obviously proximity to end customers. So I would say the answer to that is a yes. It does certainly put pressure on availability of land. In most of the locations that come out in this study, land isn't as easily available and accessible as it has been in past years, and probably for good reasons. It isn't endless, the pipeline of space. So our company, and I guess many of the other developers, are very keen to tie up land for production for the next few years. Meijner-Jan, consolidation, would you say that actually that has focused for your company on the more established logistics locations, or have there been cases where customers have really gone to, call them, secondary locations?
Well, I like the outcome of the study because it's what we experience. Consolidation, it happens for two reasons. Maybe the old footprint of a certain company, because of whatever reasons, remained intact, and after doing some new gravity analysis and network analysis, you discover that you can do better, and that leads to consolidation. It's not only a result of better processes, it's also, of course, a result of better cost. When you look to consolidation and what are then the outcomes of the study, what is it that comes to mind first? I think for a 3PL company, especially when you think about growing together with your customer comes along, then you need to be sure that you have this availability of labor, that's properly taken care of. In the example of Venlo, not limited to Venlo, but when you look at a hotspot, it starts with infrastructure, it starts with availability of space, it starts with multimodal service and the infrastructural network over the road. How quickly can you reach different destinations? One of those things that can completely block this is the flexibility of the local governments involved in your new project. A good hotspot is most likely also connected to an environment where the local government is really pinching into this. When I look to Venlo as an example, then you see that the local government is also looking into this labor requirement over time. How can we cater for this? The availability of land and what kind of things they need to connect to that. It's the whole pot of things that comes together to decide if it's a hotspot. And we will definitely have business growing into those locations, more and more even. But it will not mean that everything will hook up to that, because you still need to have your niche solutions for those customers that ask for different solutions and for whatever reason don't want to be in a huge compound. It can be small companies that want to be served in a more private way, because in these big compounds they are only a very small player. Of course, a big customer can claim more and most likely will also get some more in terms of cost, but still you need to be able to serve more when you want to grow your full business. It's not like we eliminate different solutions. At the end, of course, there still needs to be a business case, but it's not limited to. But definitely, when all comes together, these hotspots, and then supported by the proper local government, will take care that kind of business will grow.
Yeah. Manajan, there's another question coming in, and I'll read it and I'll give you my thought, and I'm very interested in how you as a business respond to that. The question is around labor. The question is, if you are changing locations or you are downsizing, for example, in a location because you want to relocate, what's the impact, of course, on labor contracts, on termination agreement, and so on and so forth. They're very difficult in many markets. I would say that for those customers that come to us for either a new location or especially a consolidation requirement, they very much look at labor, and they very much tell us that it's easier for them to stay in the area where they have current employment in place. So they're looking almost at how far can we go away from this location, and where would we have to terminate contracts and go for all the trouble that's associated with that. Is that something you recognize with new business that you go into, or do you work with clients that will go just for the perfect location, and they'll take the trouble that comes with termination of contracts as a result?
I recognize that. Termination of contracts for certain reasons, of course, happen. We also close down facilities. Simple reasons can be that a customer is not successful and just is running into bankruptcy. That happens. Other things can be that the way to keep on providing flexibility is limited by government. We have had locations all over Europe, and we still do. But we will be more careful in one country than the other. When you look at France, for example, there is still a huge market in there. But local government and labor laws, so I'm not talking about the availability of labor, but labor laws in general, total amount of working hours, the necessity to take over staff which was before on the payroll of the client. There are certain limitations that 3PL players can act upon, and as a result of those movements, we close down facilities on certain locations. And if you can then team them up with a consolidation and scale advantage on the other side, yeah, then of course you do a good deal. But labor the labor topic is not just limited to availability of labor or cost of labor. It's also really about all kinds of rules and regulations locally around that, and that enables or enables you not to change the approach or to deliver the flexibility required.
Yeah, excellent. Chris, can we take one more question from the list?
Definitely. I think as we had a number one, which was Venlo Venray for the second time running, we did have a question which was, what is so special about Venlo? Why did they win?
Venlo? Yeah. Well, Venlo doesn't have to be necessarily unique, but if I may say, and that's not because I'm sitting in an office in Venlo now, Venlo is location-wise between three airports, Düsseldorf, Maastricht, Schiphol, and for freight, all three are catered for. There is a barge terminal, there is a new rail terminal delivered, and we are talking about a location where northwest, east, southbound, you have all kinds of connections in not the most congested part of the country. When you go to Antwerp, when you go to Amsterdam, that's different. So I think Venlo in that sense is still attractive pure by its location. Another location reason for Venlo, and that is not so much connected to assets or geo, but in the Netherlands there is still a very interesting financial climate for customers that come from abroad. Our financial rulings on tax deferrals, etc., that still makes Venlo sometimes for a customer more interesting than just across the corner. Having said that, we have also a new multimodal hub in Krefeld, not so much distance away from here. There are also reasons that they just cross the border, but Venlo is not even that far away from Krefeld in that sense, so the logistics hotspot definition It's not limited to a square kilometer. One of the things that for us makes Venlo still interesting is the way the local government, the city hall, is facilitating expansion, development, labor attraction. They are very much onto this. I must say that we definitely are checking every time again, what is this labor market now doing, because Venlo is expanding, and there will be a moment that labor will not be that easily attracted anymore. But they have also their programs in order to get labor moving into the Venlo area, because they can offer them jobs. So it's a combination of infrastructure, a proper local government that facilitates business and logistics development, and at the end there will be something like cost, and that in combination also with the financial climate in the Netherlands.
Henk, do you have anything to add to that quite detailed answer about why Venlo Venray is special or number one?
No, I think the answer is spot on, and is what we see. Again, I think the multimodal element is becoming more and more important, I would say. So Venlo clearly, scores very high. There are other locations, certainly in the south of the Netherlands, and certainly the Rhine-Ruhr area, not to forget, places like Duisburg, who have that multimodal capability. And I think that is, you've mentioned sustainability earlier on in the conversation. It is important for a customer to have a choice, and it is not only land transportation that drives the business. It for some companies and some sectors, having that possibility for inland waterways, so barging and rail is certainly important.
Okay, great. And of course, we shouldn't forget that the EFT's very own 3PL Summit and CSO Forum is also held in Venlo this year, which must make it a good place to locate your logistics. And I believe both DSB and Prologis will be at that event in October. So it's a great place to come as well, to maybe question MJ and Henk further on the study and where you should locate your logistics locations in Europe. So I think we're out of time. I'd like to thank Dirk, MJ and Henk for joining us on this webinar. We will be sending next week to all the participants the full recording of this entire webinar, as well as a copy or a link to a copy of the report that was published. So you'll be able to share that with your colleagues and hopefully enjoy all the details and information in there. So with that, I'd like to finish up. I wish you all the very best of evenings, and look forward to hearing from you all again at a future EFT webinar. Thank you.